5,000 miles from Lincoln Financial Field. But what we lack in proximity, we make up for in film study. And each and every week, we'll be bringing you in-depth film breakdowns from across the pond and the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane Page. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. And I am joined by BGN's own film guru, Jonny Page. Give him a follow on Twitter at JohnnyPage9. Jonny, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. It feels weird to do a live show. We've been hammering the Patreon content of late, so I was trying to figure out why the hell it was the loudest intro I've ever heard. For those of you that looked like saw me about to die, I checked my mic and it was on full volume. So it wasn't your end, it wasn't my end. It was possibly the loudest introduction I've ever heard. We're using a new system. We spoke about in depth on the Patreon. We won't bore the free show with, but it's all fun and games. So apologies for any tech errors today. But I was like, what is going on? This is the loudest thing I've ever heard. So I've obviously moved my mic. But yeah, Patreon guys will know that I'm wearing a sleeveless top again. Technically, Shane, you won't like this in our heat chat. But front page of BBC News today was the UK is in its longest heat wave for years. And we're expecting 10 days of heat. So you won't like it. But technically, that's the front page news, Shane. We are in a heat wave. So you can moan about it all you want. You can say it's hotter where you are. But the sleeveless tops are hanging with us for now. So there you go. How are you?
I'm
Except
good.
for the heat.
I think you guys are wimps when it comes to the heat, but that's just me. No, that's not just me. You guys are wimps when it comes to the heat, but that's all right. Yesterday was probably our hottest day of the summer, and I was in it like all day because I spent like 3.5 hours in the morning in the garage working on the vehicles. Took the kids to go swim, and then we had baseball practice last night. So I was just in the heat nonstop. I've stayed inside today. It's been much nicer. That's for sure.
Yes. We are wimps, but our world is not made for it. I'm trying to figure out how to use a new chat, and I can see Krabby is hanging on there. Krabby's finally in the Patreon. I think this is the first show with Krabby hanging out. He's actually made the show time. We always say one of the reasons to get in the Patreon is that we always talk about when we're going live. So it's one of the benefits, because we just sort of schedule in times when I'm running late, as per usual. I'd love to blame the fact I have a 3.5 month, but I think sometimes I'm just late in general. This should be a good one. I like shows like this because we get to argue. And I think we picked the right amount of players where there'll be just enough disagreement. We're going to do top 10. And then I realised they'd probably be too similar. So we're going to go for top 15. So do you want to explain what on earth we're doing here?
Yeah, so we are going to be ranking our top 15 guys that are most critical to the Eagles 2025 season. And so that's a little open to interpretation, and we'll talk about how we stacked our list. We have not compared lists.
No, we haven't even discussed how to do it, in all honesty.
Yeah, so also I just
how do you see it?
Also,
how do you see most important?
I just want to point out that Jonny was chronically late to shows before the baby, so I don't think we get to use that, but it's a nice try. I also do want to mention a housekeeping thing for those of you that might be watching the live stream on Twitter right now. Our new platform does not show us Twitter comments. So usually we can throw those up on the screen. We can show comments from YouTube and Twitch. Hopefully they will add Twitter functionality in the future. But if you do want to hop in the chat, if you'll head over to youtube.com/@EaglesPinPull or twitch.tv/halfandhalf. You can watch this same live stream and we'll see your comments. So if you're commenting on Twitter and we're not putting it up, that's why, unfortunately, we can't see it.
I'll keep an eye on Twitter comments as well.
Okay.
Just in case any come in.
Sounds good. So basically what I did, Jonny, is I tried to weigh in, I kind of thought of it as who would it hurt the Eagles the most if that person just had like a season-ending injury?
Yes, that's how I do it.
If you're out of the picture, so I'm taking into account like importance of position, how good of a player you are, what the depth is like behind you. So it's not necessarily a ranking of the best players. It's the most critical guys that if they went down, it would cause a significant issue for the Eagles. So that's kind of the way I approached it.
Yeah, I'm the exact same. You never want to call it list of players you don't want to get injured because you're just playing with fire there. But yeah, I think that's basically the way you have to see it. It basically means if you're the most important, therefore the team can least do without you or whatever. I think of it if not there, the Eagles have a worse chance of winning that particular game. So we're going to start from 1 because it makes no sense to start from 15, I feel like, because actually I feel like the top 5 are top 5, 6, pretty specific. I haven't gone hot takey, so it'd be interesting to see how similar we are here. I haven't read anyone else's list online. I know this is a very common article. In fact, I'd probably be lazy and type Buff Bleeding Green as well, because it's just a easy thing to talk about in the off-season. I feel like every podcast, every show does this, but who knows? Maybe it's less popular than I think. So should we go straight into it, Shane? Should we go... Should we start with number 1? I'm guessing we're going to have the same player, so there's probably don't need to talk about it a very lot.
Let's do it. Who do you have at number 1?
I mean, I have quarterback Jalen Hurts. I'm guessing no surprises there. This is football after all, and you don't want a quarterback to get hurt. That's pretty much my rationale for it. And you have him 4. So you've already broken the whole system. You have Jalen Hurts at number 4. Do you understand the concepts of the show, Shane? The listeners are clicking off. So you are incorrect already, but I appreciate it, or am I amazed? Did you even consider having him at 1? That's completely blown my mind.
Actually, that's not true. I didn't consider him at 1. I did consider him at 2. So
are you Stephen Ruiz in disguise? Is Stephen under there?
I am not. I literally jotted down why so low because Jonny will ask. So
no, any rational human being, Shane.
Yeah.
Would.
So the Eagles went 2-1 without him last year, and the one loss they put up 33 points, and the defense collapsed at the end. And maybe that one's not fair because they were up 14-0 when he left the game, and then Saquon ripped off a 68-yard touchdown run later in the game. But I think that's part of it, is the explosiveness of this offense. And so, yes, I ranked him number 5 in my quarterbacks ranking. I think he's a very good quarterback, but if you're talking about guys that you could get through a couple games without if you had to, I mean, I believe in the whole ecosystem of the offense, the offensive line, the playmakers, and I've been pretty firm in my belief that Tanner McKee is a potential starting caliber quarterback for a while. And so if he had to play a couple of games, I've liked what I've seen from him. I think he could be functional in a run-heavy offense. And so people go on all sides of the spectrum that Jalen Hurts is no good. He's just got a super team around him, except for when we rank players, and we never rank Eagles players high enough. And I think there's an interweaving of like Jalen Hurts is very good. The Eagles also have an exceptionally talented offense. And so I also like the depth behind him. So it would really suck if he was gone. They went 2-1 in 3 games without him last year, and I think that's something that you could do. You could get through a few games without him if you had to. I mean, if we're talking like he's out for the season, you have no chance to go win the Super Bowl without him. But that's going to be a case, honestly, for several of these guys, I think.
Yeah. The great thing is that I was going to get you to tweet the list out at the end, and I know I've won. So that's what's really good about this one, is that you've totally butchered it. You spoke very well. I don't agree with about 95%, Shane, of what you said, if I'm honest. I think you can talk yourself into it. If the Eagles had to play 15 games with Tanner McKee this year, it's not ending well. If they have to play 15 games without someone else, they can probably still survive, as bad as those losses will be. So I think he's number 1. I appreciate the argument. I get it. I'm glad you're not saying like Trevor Lawrence is better or anything, because that would be ludicrous. Which we've seen online of late. But I thought we'd do 10 seconds on number 1, and then we spent longer on number 1. So I guess it only makes sense for you to give me your number 1 then, Shane. So
yeah, do you want to guess who it is?
Well, I'll give you my number 2 then, because and then you can see where you put him. I guess I have Jalen Carter at 2nd, and I'm guessing.
Okay, that is not my number 1.
You do not have him at 1st, do you?
But he's my number 2.
You have. Oh, right. So you have Saquon Barkley number 1.
Actually, no. My number 1's Lane Johnson, and
wow.
I think you just fall back into the Eagles in his career have a 65% win rate with him and a 39% win rate without him, and so there's a dramatic swing in performance when Lane Johnson's been on the field and off the field, and I think you layer on top of that this year, who is the right guard, because we don't know yet. And so, obviously, I don't care what PFF and other people want to say, Jordan Mailata is not a better player than Lane Johnson, but he's a very good tackle. But if Jordan Mailata goes down, you at least have Landon Dickerson next to him, and so you can feel a little more
Yeah.
comfortable helping out and things. With the Eagles, we don't know what the right side of that line looks like, and so I went Lane Johnson number one. A, because I think he's the best right tackle in the game, and B, because the depth behind him is bad, and the guy that'll play next to him is uncertain right now.
Yeah, I must admit, one of the things that's good about this exercise is it forces you to look at the depth chart again, and the Eagles' line depth is it's a little shaky. They're sort of hoping on guys like Kendall, Pryor, Green, and there's just the tackle depth is pretty abysmal. I think no Fred Johnson is a really big loss.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be fair, I should have guessed Lane. Look at my own list. That's not radical. I realised I should have gone one by one, and I was so certain we'd have the top three the same that we've just already broken all the system and just started waffling. So I may as well tell you before we discuss Carter. So I had Lane at 3.
Okay.
As well. The reason why I didn't say him there was just that I didn't think you'd have him at 1 personally. So you've made the case for Lane. I don't need to make the case for Lane that much. You've summarised it all pretty well. I guess why do I have Carter ahead of him? And I went back and forth on the 5 actually quite a few times. You talk about depth at offensive tackle. Behind Carter, you've got a Jomo who's basically hoping to replace Milton Williams. You've got Jordan Davis who plays nothing like that kind of role. And then you've got Ty Robinson who's interesting but still has work to do. I just don't think there's a Carter type replacement. And I think Carter's such a unique freak talent. I think you can make the argument that the offensive line is better as a unit. So if they did lose Lane Johnson, what can you do? Well, you can probably stick Tyler Steen at right tackle, maybe. And then you can stick someone at guard and pray the guard position survives. The Eagles have survived with average guards of late. Maybe you hope Trevor Keegan year 2 steps up, and you could also do some funky things. Leaving Goddard into chip if you need to more. He's more than happy in pass protection. Leaving Will Shipley as a backup in pass protection if needed. Chipping to the right-hand side a lot of times because you can trust Mailata, Dickerson, Jurgens and Steen potentially on it. Sorry, you can trust, not Steen, because he would not be the right guard, obviously, but you can trust the 3 on the left at least to handle their blocks one-on-one. And whereas on defensive tackle, I think you just lose the ability to rush free. I think if Carter goes, if they take away a Jomo, I don't think you've got enough from Davis, Robinson or Booker, really. So that's why I had Carter above Lane. You obviously feel similarly about Carter because you have him at 2. So you have him above Hurts as well, which is obviously ludicrous, but I can understand the rationale. I think. Still, my brain still hurts from that one. Anything I've missed on Carter? A little bit scary, actually, Shane. Would you agree that we're a little bit, and this is to be expected, by the way, when you win a Super Bowl, the depth is going to struggle? Yeah. I think the Eagles are such a good draft that they're relying on a lot of young players this year stepping up because the depth behind them, like, we're on our Patreon podcast, we did all 22 looks at Hinton and Cameron Williams, and we're like, oh, they'll never play next year. Drew Kendall. And you look at that and you think, I mean, they might. They might. They're 2 injuries away from. We've seen nothing from Kenyon Green. We've seen nothing in the game from Trevor Keegan. I mean, then it's like Pryor, Kendall. I guess the answer would be if Lane Johnson does go down, I should have mentioned Pryor could go at right tackle, not just Keegan. And I think you can live with Jurgens, Pryor, and Steen on your right-hand side, maybe. I think there's just a little bit more wiggle room offensive line to deal with that Lane than there is a defensive tackle, personally. But again, if a Jomo and Ty Robinson take a step forward, then maybe you're right. But the depth is a little bit lighter in quite a lot of positions, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And my thing with Carter is, A, he's just an elite player, and B, there's a lot of unproven guys behind him. Jordan Davis has never been impactful as a pass rusher. Thomas Booker only played 179 snaps last season. Byron Young played 99 snaps. Ty Robinson's a rookie, and I'm a big Moro Ojimo guy, but Carter's going to have to wreak havoc and play a lot of snaps doing it and stay healthy. Or I think this defensive line really starts to fall apart, especially when you consider the edge rushers around Carter, because they benefit a lot from Carter as well, and I don't think the Eagles necessarily have a standout edge rusher either.
Yes, we'll come on to that. Right, tell me who your number 3 is, and I'm guessing it's my number 4.
I got
but
Zach
maybe
Bond.
Not. It's not. Interesting.
Okay. Where's Bond for
I think this will surprise people. I think, will it surprise people based on what I said last year? Because people already thought I'd Bond at number 2. I had him at 5.
Okay, that's not far.
I have one more above him. We're not miles off. I mean, do we need to talk loads about Zach Bourne? I think everyone knows why he's so important to his defense. Do you want to know why? And I guess you had the same as me, and I'm guessing you got the same rationale. Last year, I would have flipped Bourne and Carter.
Uh-huh.
Is that fair? Would you have said if you could go back in time and say you could lose one of them? Because you've got Milton Williams, because you've got a Jomo. I think Zach Bourne has the most unique skill set of any Eagles defensive player, and we've said time and time again that he's the thing that made the whole thing work last year. This year, if you're being very positive, and I know he's injured, Campbell is like the only linebacker that has a similar profile.
Yeah.
So absolute worst case if Bourne was to go down, I think you have a little bit more of a plug and play replacement. Obviously not the same, because I don't think anyone could do what Bourne did last year. To be honest, we'll see if Bourne can repeat what he did last year.
Exactly.
It was sort of ludicrous how good he was. So I have him below Carter, whereas last year I would have had him above Carter. You obviously still feel very highly on him because you have him above Hurts.
Yeah, to me, there's just a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, that's the only
Bond.
reason why I pushed him down. Yeah.
There's a lot of uncertainty around him. You've got the Nakobe Dean injury. Jahad Campbell, I love, but he's a rookie who's working back from an injury as well. You're changing out a safety behind Zach Bond, and so much of the defense is a Mike delivering a receiver or a tight end up to a safety, and so everything runs through Bond defensively. And if he's able to replicate, which, let's be honest, it was a breakout year for him too, and so could he just not have another year like that in him? It's certainly possible. If he plays at that level again, it would stabilize the whole middle of that defense, other linebacker and safety questions aside. So that's why I had him up at number 3.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. It's very fair. I think there's, in my opinion anyway, there's like a top 6.
Uh-huh.
We talk about tiers on the Patreon. I think there's a 6 where I can almost have them anywhere. I mean, I think there's a drop-off. That's just my opinion anyway. You might disagree. I guess I'm up next. I've got a feeling you're not going to have this guy at 5. I think you might have him at 6, if I'm predicting. You might even have him at 7. You might even have him at 8, but I'm going for Saquon Barkley at 4.
Okay.
You're going to have him lower, aren't you? I know you're going to have him lower.
I've got him at 6.
Yeah, I think I know you've got 5, but we'll come on to that after. I think. I'll make the case for Saquon. I'll be honest, when I first did this, I had him at 2. Which I then backed off just because positional value. I think 2 things. I think depth is incredibly shaky. I'm not a Will Shipley guy yet. I haven't seen enough. I like AJ Dillon, I guess. Do I like AJ Dillon? I guess I do. I mean, I liked him when he played for the Packers, but he's a bit of a volume guy to me. I think he could step in and do a couple of games, but he's nothing like the explosiveness of Saquon. I still think people underestimate how good Saquon was last year, because it's a position that doesn't matter a huge amount in the eyes of many. And the explosive percentage, like numbers last year, were just absurd. And they are not things that other people can do. Like the amount of long runs, the amount of touchdowns he had. Like, you think of long plays being deep shots down the sidelines for a receiver streaking. And Saquon was just utterly absurd. So I don't think there's anyone that can do what Saquon does in the league. Anyone could do what he did last year. The fact he didn't slow down, the fact he seemed healthy throughout the year as well, I think the drop-off is huge. I don't think it's incredibly radical, Shane. I wouldn't belittle someone if they put him at 1. I really wouldn't. I really think he's that good. Whether he'll be able to do it again, I mean, he won't repeat the numbers, he says, because I just can't really see it. But like, you go through the games. I looked at this when I was researching this. There wasn't a single game last year where he didn't have a 10-yard plus run, which is just ridiculous, really, when you think about it. 5 of them, he had 1 game. And then you've got games like Jacksonville, he had 6. Carolina, he had 5. These are 10 plus runs. Dallas, 4. Washington, 4. Like, there are games when he's just consistently. If you want to look at breakaway, 15 plus yards. There was only a few of them. Ironically, it was a Super Bowl, which is the argument against Saquon. Clearly, is a Super Bowl. But you know what? I don't even know if it is, because the Chiefs spent so long trying to stop him that I feel like, to an extent, that was one of the reasons why they were so successful. So even in the Super Bowl, when I think he didn't play anywhere near as well as he could have, I still think he had value, which is what is sort of absurd about him. And I think he's got underrated value in the passing game, to be honest. I think he came off the field just to give him a rest. But I think you could absolutely do more things with him in the passing game if you wanted. So I really wouldn't belittle someone who had him 1, I'll be honest. I am not that far away from having him even higher, to be honest. And like, I understand why you have him lower positional value, etc. But yeah, the numbers last year are utterly absurd. And the more you look at them, whenever you go on PFF and just sort and look at some of the numbers, they're just like ridiculous. Like him and Henry, but I think even more so than Saquon. To have 5.7 or whatever yards per attempt on like over 400 attempts is just ridiculous. The touchdown numbers, obviously, the touchdown numbers would have been higher, obviously, if there wasn't a tush push. So yeah, I really think you could have him higher personally. But there you go. That's me. Enough of me just chatting about Saquon.
Yeah, we've got a comment here from Krabby that says Rube has some amazing Barkley stats in a recent article.
Yeah,
some mind-blowing stats. I have not read that, but I might.
I won't steal his stats. I haven't read it. Read it, but I will leave it to people. Ruben Frank of NBC Sports, who's been there for ages and is awesome. So yeah, I can imagine they are really good. Yeah, the numbers are just they are like off the charts ridiculous. Like, but yeah. I think we need to talk about how good he is. I can see why you have him. Any reason why you want to say why you had him a load of guys ahead?
Yeah, it actually has less to do. It doesn't really have anything to do with positional value and more just how loaded the Eagles' weapons are on offense. That like,
yeah, but running back, Shane, they're not. That's what's.
Yeah, that's
they're not a running back.
But
it's a running offense as well.
It is a running offense, but at the end of the day, if Saquon goes down, as long as you have Jalen Hurts healthy, and we'll see what AJ Dillon is, but as long as you've got your receivers and your O-line healthy, like I just feel like the offense is so loaded that I almost just pushed like the whole skill group down a little bit, because it's like if you lose one of these players, I think you're fine. It's if you start to stack injuries. Is where I get really concerned. So that's why I've got him a little lower. I probably found myself skewing defensively on this more than offensively.
Interesting. Fair enough. Right, tell me who you have 5 then. And I'm guessing it's who I have 6.
I bet it's not, based on our conversation so far. I've got Quinyon Mitchell at number 5. Is that who you have?
Okay, it's not.
Okay.
Right.
So here's my thing with Quinyon, and you can tell me where you've got him. Darius Slay is gone.
I actually wouldn't have him in my tier 1. Yeah, you tell me why you have him 5, sorry.
Okay. So Slay is gone, and so much of what the Eagles did last year was predicated on the idea that they implicitly trusted both of their boundary corners to handle vertical routes so their safeties could take care of things in the middle of the field. Now Slay is gone, so you introduce some uncertainty at the opposite boundary corner, and you hope Keely Ringo or Adoree Jackson steps in and plays well. You've also got some uncertainty at safety with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson gone. Maybe Andrew Makuba's the guy. Maybe it's Sidney Brown. Maybe it's somebody not on the roster yet. And so I think there's a lot of things that are unstable in the secondary. If Quinyon Mitchell can continue to play in his second season like he did his rookie year, that alleviates a lot of those concerns. You can have a safety that you don't trust as much on his side, or you can push coverage to the side of the boundary corner, the opposite boundary corner, if they're struggling over there. So if Quinyon Mitchell can lock down a side of the field, it makes everything easier for all the other changing parts. So he is my number 5 for that reason. Where did you have Mitchell?
Good question. I had him at 8. I don't disagree with anything you said, and to be honest, you sort of convinced me to bump him up. I think the way I did this was I also looked at talent. So I love Quinyon Mitchell, but for me at 6, I had AJ Brown, just based on the fact that I don't think the Eagles' offense is anywhere near as good without AJ Brown, because AJ Brown is AJ Brown. Good timing for a comment from Aiden Hughes. Yeah, no, I don't think it is a hot take, Aiden. I had him near him because I just think talent. Like, I love Quinyon Mitchell, and I think, yes, you're probably right that in terms of the overall grand scheme of things, I know it's most important, not most talented, but I think the two go hand in hand. I just don't think there's anywhere near you can run the same offense without AJ Brown. You have him at 9. Wow. To me, that, and obviously we disagree on the tier thing, I would have Quinyon like, for me, that my top 6 are like in like a stack. Like, I don't think it's radical to put anyone. I mean, I'd put Hurts 1 in his own tier, but I'd have Carter to AJ Brown. And yes, for the comment, yes, Arsenal shirt. Indeed. Yes, at least the Eagles win. That is very true. Yeah, I don't know. AJ at 9's hard, man. I think the offense is. I think AJ and Saquon go hand in hand, where if you don't have AJ, you just go nuts against the run. If you don't have Saquon, you can just basically try and take away the pass. I think the two of them go hand in hand for me. So I'm really intrigued to see who you have above him. So do you want to give me your 7?
Yeah.
Or do you want to just quickly chat on AJ? Is there anything you want to come back on before you
AJ is phenomenal. I did wide receiver rankings for Birds of the Round Table. He was my number 1 receiver in the NFL. And he's number 9 on my list here. And it's just because of what's around him. Like, you have Devontae Smith still. And so I think Devontae Smith is a really good receiver. If A.J. Brown goes down, and you've got Dallas Goedert and Saquon, and you've got Jalen Hurts, you've got all of these guys that I think very highly of. And, we've done our position rankings through tight end. And, the Eagles, I gave, per my rankings, Hurts is number 5 quarterback. A.J. Brown's the number 1 receiver. Goddard was the number 5 tight end. And so it sort of pushes their individual importance down because I'm so confident in the rest of the group if one of them goes down. So, that's why he's a little lower. It's because of Devontae and the guys around him, not because I don't think he's massively important.
Yeah, see, everything you said is why I'm going to have Devontae Smith lower, but everyone else is going to want me to have him. I am much more of team AJ 1, Devontae 2. I know a lot of Eagles fans are 1A, 1B. I absolutely love Devontae Smith. I think he's probably a top 15 receiver in the league. I think AJ is a step ahead, and that's why I have him higher. But we'll come to that when we get to Devontae. But
he did not make, when we did our Birds of the Round Table rankings, he did not make my top 16 receivers in the NFL.
There you go. And I haven't ranked them all, but again, yeah.
Oh no, that's not true. He did. He was number 13 for me.
13. There you go.
I was looking at the wrong list.
7, Shane. Who'd you have?
Okay, number 7, I put Nolan Smith.
Wow.
So Nolan Smith went off in the postseason. He's got 4 sacks in the playoffs, which was the Eagles' single-season record. Actually, astonishingly, he is second most all-time in Eagles history in postseason sacks with 4.5, which is kind of crazy. Trails only Reggie White. But the Eagles just lost Josh Sweat. He plays a different position, but they lost Milton Williams. There's a lot of sack production that's gone. They need Nolan Smith to continue to grow as a pass rusher and to play high snap counts. Because if Nolan Smith was out of the picture at edge rusher, I mean, you've got retreads. A retread I like in Azeez Ojulari, one I'm not as huge on, but still kind of like in Josh Uche. You've got, Jalix Hunt, but you are thin at edge. And so Nolan Smith comes in at 7 for me because of the heater he finished the season on last year and how thin the Eagles are at the position behind him. Oh, and I didn't even mention Brandon Graham retiring, so that factors in too.
I think this is personal take and people will disagree. I think you're overrating positional value than talent. I think even if what you said is true, the Eagles would be better losing Nolan Smith and AJ Brown, because AJ Brown is a 1 in his position, and you need elite players. And if you don't replace Nolan Smith and you have Azeez Ojulari play more, or Josh Uche has to play more, or maybe you even give Campbell a few snaps at edge, I think you will get worse, but I don't think you will get as worse as you will from a drop-off from AJ Brown, because you're going from a position of insanely high strength. So I think, and this is where the joys of discussing these things are, everyone looks at things differently. Just personal opinion, I think you've underrated talent there. I think Nolan Smith's very, very good, but is he exceptional yet? Let's wait and see. And I also really like Azeez Ojulari. The depth is not good, but I think if Hunt takes a step forward, you've got Ojulari. Uche can play a bit. I mean, I think you can hang in there. Maybe, as I said, you give Campbell a few snaps there. It's not ideal. I'm not saying it's a good player to lose. I still had him in. Have I told you where I had him?
No.
I had him at 11.
Look at that guess.
I think Aiden Hughes.
Aiden
commenting saying Eagles had the PFF had the Eagles D line top 3, and I agree that's absurd. I don't know who else there is out there. I love the Eagles. I'd love them to be right, but I find that hard to believe personally.
Yeah, Jalen
Sorry,
Carter's
yeah.
doing a lot of the lifting in that ranking.
And we're not allowed to change our minds. I was going to say this because we could definitely convince each other. You probably convinced me Quignon could be up 1 or 2. But yeah, just personal opinion. I think you're a little bit too
Yeah, I think
lower
you
on talent.
probably swayed me a little bit. I probably would like put Brown at 7 and bump Smith and my number 8 down a slot at
Yeah, I
this point.
think
But
just elite talent is all I need, really, in my opinion. Right, should I give you, seeing as I'm 1 ahead of you? Well, no, technically give me your 8 because I reckon it might be my 7. Although based on the way we're doing it, we're actually quite different. So,
yeah, my number 8 was Reed Blankenship.
wow, I thought I was going to be higher on him. I had him 10.
Okay, so Reed Blankenship, um, the he's going to be playing next to a new safety in a defense where communication from safeties is so key. Like safeties are the
Yeah.
big deal in the Fangio defense. We don't know what the other safety is going to be, but Reed Blankenship, it's hard to say. Like I feel like he's underrated across the league, while simultaneously feeling like some Eagles fans might overrate him. But he's a really good player, and the Eagles need him to help hold together the back end of the secondary while you onboard a rookie in Makuba or while Sidney Brown, whoever it's going to be. I'm pretty confident it's going to be Makuba. But I think he's hugely important on the back end of this defense because you're not sure what you're going to get at the other safety position.
Yep, I echo everything you said, which is why I have him at 10. And I think most people who rank players will not have him that high. I think it's a schematic thing. I also think he's very talented, and I don't have any faith in everyone behind them. I'm still unsure on Makuba. I'd love to be right. I'd love him to be good. I had a second round grade on him. I think he might take a bit of time to transition. I don't care for Lewis Kai. I know he wears a first round pick or whatever. People like him. I'd love Sam or McCollum or Brown to step up, but definitely wait and see, mate. I think the only thing you could say is you could get radical if he got out and maybe push Cooper DeJean back. Maybe that can help. I know you've then got to feel a slight of a nickel, I know, but there's maybe things you could do potentially with that in mind if you had like Ringo outside and Jackson in the slot, for example. Right, I'll give you my 7 then, seeing as he's not come up. I just mentioned him, Cooper DeJean. So I have DeJean above Quignon, which I went back and forth about 15 times on them. And I changed them. My rationale is very simple. I think, personally, the nickel in Fangio's defense is every bit as important as outside corner. I think there is better depth outside than there is inside. Straight up. I think Adore Jackson and Ringo are both playable, and I'm not sure who is playable in the slot as much than DeJean. I also think the stuff he gives you against the run is so hard to replace. I think the fact he, in this particular situation as well, we're talking about other players could get injured. You have the flexibility to put him at safety if you really want to. I just think versatility-wise and how talented he was, I know Quignon's probably the better out-and-out corner, but I think in terms of overall role, I had Cooper pretty high. As I said, I think there's a tier cut for me below 6, and now I'm in like the second tier. But I personally had Cooper above Quignon, and I did go back and forward on this because I think Quignon's the better player, just. But yeah, I'm going to take Cooper DeJean above him just because of what he can do.
Yeah, I remember us having the discussion back in the season about like if you could only keep one of Cooper DeJean and Quignon Mitchell, what would you do? And it's interesting. I still think we're on opposite sides of that, but I had Cooper DeJean at 10 for all the reasons that you mentioned. He was so valuable down the stretch, so instrumental in the Eagles defense elevating post-bye. And also, if you're just talking like you mentioned, if Reed Blankenship goes down, you could probably put Cooper DeJean at safety. Like, he brings a lot of versatility. If you had to, you could play him outside. Because, I mean, the thought that he could play in the slot last year, I remember, was kind of like people were pushing back on that. Like, he's an outside corner. And we were like, maybe just put him in the slot because he'd be really good against the run. And he turned out to be fantastic there. And so I legitimately think he could play any position in the defensive backfield, and that probably pushes him up a little too. But I had him at number 10.
All right, fair enough. Well, I guess I'll give you... Shall I give you my 9 next? So you've had your top 10. So if we were doing top 10, Nolan Smith would have been the one player that would have been different on so far.
Yeah.
And then obviously the one that I'm going to mention is not in your top 10. Again, I think this is where maybe I think I'm highlighting talent more. So I've gone for Jordan Mailata basically insert everything we said about Lane Johnson from earlier on in the pods. I do find it crazy that people like PFF, no disrespect to Jordan, have him as the best tackle in the league. I just can't watch him and Lane Johnson and say he's better than Lane. I just don't really get how anyone can come to that opinion, personally, except for the fact he plays left tackle, I guess, if you're still one of the people that care about that. So basically, just everything we said about Lane Johnson earlier. I think you can argue that depth behind him is just as bad as it is behind Blankenship and Nolan Smith, in all honesty, as well, as we brought up earlier on, and I think he's a better player. So I think depth behind him is less so than Blankenship and Smith, and I think he's a better player. That's why I have him ranked above. Any reason why you're a little bit lower on him, or just the way it fell when you did it?
Yeah, just the way it fell. I had him at number 12. I think he's obviously a great player. I don't think he's in Lane Johnson's tier, but I'm glad that he's good enough that some people think that. I think his story plays into how people see him a little bit as well, being the 7th round pick that had never played football and all of that.
How dare you?
He's phenomenal. And I do think, if you had to, even if he and Lane were like the same caliber player, it would still be harder to replace Lane just because of who plays next to him, which is an unknown, versus Landon Dickerson, which would help out a little bit on that left side. So he's down lower than me, obviously, than Mike Lane for some talent reasons and some replaceability reasons. But it would really suck if the Eagles lost to either guy for very long.
Yep. Big time agree. We're actually quite different, aren't we? So this is where I guess, I don't know if things can get radical. I'm trying to look on my list. I don't think I struggled with 15, actually. I feel like I had a pretty clear top 15. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you have. Be interesting to see if there's someone that... Actually, no, I think there's a couple that I left off that you're going to have on. I think there's 2 or 3 that I might argue with you over. Right, 12. I don't know if he'll make yours, but I'm guessing he will. I had... Oh, wait. Technically, it should be you. You go.
Okay. My number 11 was Moro Ojimo.
See, it might surprise you. I didn't have him.
Okay.
He's the one that I missed off. That he would have been like 16 probably for me. Or, yeah. See, again, I'm going down the talent thing. I just don't think you can argue with Jomo is more important than Mailata. Just straight up better player. The argument is you just hope you've got enough, and whoever's next to Carter gets so much single coverage or one-on-one matchups that you can just survive. But yeah, I can give me the rationale for him. But I already think I can understand what you're going to say. It's going to be a lot about depth.
Yeah, a lot of depth. The Eagles need him a lot this year with Sweat gone, with BG gone, who kicked inside some, and with the depth behind him. He was really good last year, and he's going to be playing a lot more snaps, maybe get a lot more opportunities to just pin back his ears and rush the passer too. So if he could take a leap forward this year, it's going to be pretty key to that interior of the Eagles' defensive line, I think. So I'm a big Moro Ojimo believer. And I think this is the year he kind of really takes off with some more snaps, and the Eagles really need him to. They're counting on it.
Fair enough. In the era of talent, I've gone for 12 as Landon Dickerson. I moved 11 to 15 around all the time. Do you have him or not at all?
I don't. He was just out of mine.
Yeah, see, I just think, again, I'm going down talent route. If he goes down, who's stepping in? Trevor Keegan, Matt Pryor, there's just a big drop off.
Yeah.
I think you lose that Jurgens, Mailata, Dickerson. I think Eagles Eric put something on about how many of Barkley's big runs he launched. I think he had to go in there. I had him below some of the people that I've got coming up, and then I moved him up because I just thought he's too good. And do you want to know the other reason why I had him high up was I think in a pinch he can play centre.
Yes, he
is
was a
why.
center.
Which is why I had him above Jurgens, because I was going to go back and forth, and I thought, no, Dickerson's a better player, and he can play both positions. Technically, Jurgens can as well, but I think Dickerson's a lot more suited to it. Right, so how do you want to do this? You want to give me your 13? I'll tell you where I had the player, if I had him at all.
Yeah, my number 13 is Dallas Goedert.
Hey, we agree. We have not agreed
13?
on showing that is the only one since Jalen Carter we've had the same.
Nice. I mean, injuries and volume have been the Achilles heel for Dallas Goedert so far in his career. But he is one of the best run blocking tight ends in the league who is also a receiving threat. And
Yeah.
as a receiving threat, he was second in yards after the catch per reception and yards per route run last year among tight ends. And so if he got more volume, if he was in a less run heavy offense, if he was in a run heavy offense that just didn't have AJ Brown, whatever, I think he would be thought of way differently around the league than he is. I think he's a really good player. We just did tight end rankings this week on Birds of the Round Table, and I had him the number 5 tight end in the NFL. So I think he's massively important to the Eagles.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting. Both of us have him above Devontae Smith. I think that might surprise some people on a pure talent basis. Seeing as you went 13, I'll give you 14. I do have the aforementioned Devontae Smith. It's an interesting one because I think, do you have him? Oh, wow, we're agreeing all of a sudden. It'd be quite funny if 15's the same.
We thought the very end is where we would disagree a lot.
Yeah, there's a world where you don't have him and you just say, well, do you know what? Jahan Dotson should be good enough to be a 2. That's what he was at Washington and he was fine. Maybe Jahan Dotson actually needs to be a 2 where he played more. So actually, you just bump Devontae Smith up. Down and bump Jahan Dotson up and you still got AJ Brown and you're okay. And I thought about that and I thought, no, because the difference is one's really good and one's not. Yeah. So you are going to miss him more because he's very, 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 very good. And whilst I don't think he's the most critical, I think his numbers don't reflect significant stats every single week. 800 and something yards last year, but big plays are there. He's become a moments player rather than like a consistent production, I would say. And that's more to do with how the Eagles use him. And I think some of that does limit how high you can see him as an overall player because there's a lot of games last year, Shane, when you just sort of look back and go, we didn't really do a lot that particular week. I mean, even in Super Bowl, he obviously had the amazing touchdown catch, but only had 5 targets. Washington, 4 targets. Rams, 4 targets. I mean, he didn't crack 70 yards in all of the playoffs. And he had 1 touchdown in the Super Bowl. But the big plays are there. He did go off occasionally. I think looking here, he only had 200-yard games. So I love Devontae Smith from talent-wise, and his numbers are because of the offense he's in. If this was a talent ranking, he'd be higher. I think you're not mad to put a Jomo above him. And I think in hindsight, if I was ballsier, I possibly could have kept him off the list. But I think just outright talent, I think he's too important, personally.
Yeah, I mean he's really important to the offense too. He's underrated as a deep threat. He's good as a yak guy too, just a smooth route runner, and he's very important. I felt like for the same reason I pushed some offensive skill players down because the Eagles have such a loaded skill position room. I also couldn't leave any of them off the list because that's kind of bad reasoning. It's like they've got so many good, like they've got 4 really good weapons, and I only put 3 of them on my list, and so Devontae Smith sneaks just into the back end of mine.
Right, bring us home. Actually, let's play a guessing game. So, who do I think you've got? It's a bad guessing game because I need to bring up a list of players. So, I'll tell you who I considered then. I considered a Jomo. I considered Jalix Hunt. I considered Keely. No, I didn't consider Ringo. That's a lie. It would have been Jomo, Hunt, and Juergens. And I went with Cam Juergens. What about you?
All right. I had a hard time with this one. I considered 3 guys as well. I considered Andrew Makuba.
Wow.
Just stepping into that safety spot and him being good would be massive. I also considered, and I kind of wanted to just pigeonhole him in, because if you're going to have a hot takey spot, 15 is the place to do it. But I considered Jake Elliott because, Jake Elliott was 26 of 37 from 50-plus yards going into last season, where he only went 1 of 7. And his overall field goal percentage dropped from 94% in 2023 to 78% last year. He was a weapon for the offense prior to last season, and he reportedly dealt with a hamstring injury, but I'm always skeptical about those reports. I was bad this season, and I was also injured. He's going to be 30. It'd be huge if he could come back and be the guy that he was for them. I just remember he would trot out for a 53-yard field goal, and it's he's going to make it. I'm going to go get a drink. I don't even need to watch it. And So having that back would be huge. But the guy I ultimately went with was Jihad Campbell. And
Wow.
I
I didn't even consider him.
yeah, Jihad Campbell for me, I look at a lot of the things that Zach. I mean, our listeners will remember that the watch along that we did for Jihad Campbell. We talked about a lot of the things that he can do are things that we also think that Zach Bond is really good at. And so the idea, the things that you could do creatively, if that's the case, if he's healthy, which is a question, if he gets up to speed quickly, where you can flip those guys on the line and do a lot of different things, I think it would make the Eagles one of the most unique defensive fronts in the NFL. It could give offensive lines just massive fits. And again, help shore up that middle of the field that's maybe a little weaker by virtue of the safety position behind it. So Jihad Campbell is who I put there. I also thought about Aziz Ojulari / Jalix Hunt, but couldn't decide which one.
No.
And so those were some of the guys that just missed for me, but I put Campbell 15.
Yeah, I guess I'll make the case for Jurgens. If he gets injured, I think you move Dickerson potentially. I'm not sure when we watch Kendall that he's ready to play significant snaps yet. And I think just having a strong centre that can do what the Eagles can do in terms of the pull game and pinball stuff outside zone is just massive. So I think Jurgens has huge responsibility. I deliberately found a way to get 4 offensive linemen on there. I know you've only got 2, because for me that's still the biggest strength of the team. So I've gone more O-line heavy. You've gone with a couple of extra defenders. So if I'm right, we had the same 15 except for Ajomo, Campbell, Jurgens and Dickerson, yeah?
Yes.
So I've gone 2 heavy players and you've gone with 2 defensive players. And who's the biggest discrepancy we have? This is where I should... if we'd sent each other our list before, is there anyone that's more than 4 off? I think Jordan White was only 3. Nolan Smith, I think, is the biggest discrepancy.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Landon Dickerson as well, because if you wouldn't have him at 16, then he'd probably be the biggest. Yeah. Out of the ones we've got, it's Nolan. But yeah, it was a cool exercise. Just very quickly, because we've gone too long. We always go too long, so let's wrap it up nice and quick, because it's the off season. It is a dead time of the off season as well. Anything you learned from the exercise? Because it was one of those things we were like, yeah, it's an easy episode. Let's do it. And then as you do it, you start sort of thinking big picture. So I've already said my big takeaway. So I'll give my big takeaway. What I've already mentioned. So I'll be very quick. Was just the Eagles' depth is not the same as it was last year. When you think about people like Moro Jomo, he was the 3rd defensive tackle last year. It makes a difference when you think about the depth at tackle in particular. With Fred Johnson being there, even people like Kenny Gainwell being there. I think the depth was better last year, and that's absolutely not a shame in the Eagles off-season. The Eagles could not afford to keep depth around. They're going to have to play some rookies. So I think just in general, they're a little bit more stars and scrubs this year than they were last year. That's my sort of big takeaway from doing this. Yeah,
my takeaway is that it's along those same lines, but it's really hard to repeat as Super Bowl champions because everybody that was in a contract year that showed out is gone. And just like you said, you're relying on young guys to step up, and your depth gets a little shaky. And so, if it works out well, you have a Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean type young guy that steps up in a rookie season or in a first year with the team, and it makes all the difference. And if not, then you're like the majority of teams that try to repeat for a Super Bowl. They just don't make it. So it's a tough road to repeat. I do think the Eagles starting lineup is really good on both sides of the ball.
Yes.
There's obviously question at safety and boundary corner and some of those things, but this team should be really good. And a key part of making it to a Super Bowl is staying healthy. And if the Eagles do that, they should have a Super Bowl caliber roster. And if they don't stay healthy, it goes down to that dice roll of the young guys and how that shakes out. So,
I think that's the other big thing. Rookies got a role to play, man.
Yep.
It's hard to look at the depth chart and not think that Ty Robinson, Campbell, and Makuba have sort of got to be decent. And if they're not, I think the Eagles will look to add vets closer to the season or possibly when the season starts, because I think you're going to have to sort of use them early, basically.
Yeah. You got a comment here from Adams Exploits on YouTube said, I mentioned missing Kenny Gainwell in another recent live, and the hosts weren't fans. I'm gonna guess it was on one of Ryan's shows because Ryan inexplicably hates Kenny Gainwell,
He has the job, man. He does his job.
Yeah, the Eagles will sorely miss Kenny Gainwell this season. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Unless AJ
Yep.
Dillon comes in and balls out, which again, new guy on the team, you'll see.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? Right, Shane. Good to do a live show for a while. It's been a while. We're realizing we haven't got that long. Preseason's not miles away. I never say guests before we get guests on, just in case. But if things go well, we've got an absolutely awesome guest next week, and that will be live, and that will be a proper nerdy one as well. So if you like your scheme chats, I'll leave you with that hint. It'll be a very, very, very good one.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of On the Shane Page. If you enjoy our content, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/ontheshanepage. We have lots of exclusive content that goes to Patreon, as well as our free stuff that comes out here. So you can help us support that, get access to a lot more stuff, a cool Discord server to chat with us, and a bunch of other things. So there's a $3 and a $5 a month tier. Go check that out. You can grab a free 1-week trial, and we think you will like it and stick around. Thank you to everyone that's joined for the live show. We really appreciate you guys. Those of you that are watching on Twitter and we couldn't see your comments, apologize again, but YouTube will show your comments up here, and hopefully they'll add that functionality soon. But we are going to get out of here, and we will catch you guys next time. New software. I guess it's just not going to play the right video. I'll add that later. You live guys get a treat. Catch y'all next time.